Hello art lovers! In this video we talk about the most important points of design. The first and simplest thing is a dot. Dots can have different sizes and shapes, like this image you see. Also, dots can form shapes by being placed next to each other, like dot work. Look at this image. Dots can form different shapes by being placed next to each other, which we also want to use in our work. Even in professional courses, we do lighting on the face by placing white dots next to each other. Also, a dot can easily convey a feeling by being placed in the right place. Like image number 1, which shows a sense of heaviness. Or like number 2, which shows a sense of lightness. Well, by joining the dots together, a line is created. It is the most important thing we deal with in our work. The line is created by placing an infinite number of dots next to each other. There are many different types like the images you see. It may seem simple, but we need to learn the correct and principled way to draw all the lines we need. Straight lines, curved lines, thin lines, wide lines, light lines, bold lines, and other types. But let's go to the most important lines that we deal with when drawing. We start with a straight line. Draw a lot of straight lines and let your hand get used to moving on the paper and holding the pencil in your hand. The important thing here is that your lines are created without hand shaking. That is, when we draw a straight line, there should be no oscillation on it. Your line should be smooth and without oscillation. With the same dark pencil that we have in our hand, we need to find the ability to draw a light line. Draw the lines as smoothly as possible, but with less pressure. These lines are used when drawing the initial design, and you should definitely learn to work with less pressure. The next line I want to talk about, and the most important line that we should learn to draw, is the thin double-sided line. That is a line that has a thin beginning and end and is blurred. If we put this line under a magnifying glass, for example, it should look like this. If we make this line that I drew several times larger, it should look like this. As you can see, both sides of this line are thin. This line is very important in our drawings, and both sides of it must be thin. We use this type of line to draw hair, eyelashes, and eyebrows. It may seem simple at first, but you should draw dozens of pages of this line and practice well. There are also curved lines and other forms of lines that are very important for gaining the skill and technique of working with a pencil on paper and cardboard, which I will teach you to practice in another video. Now, what is important is that you gain sufficient skill in drawing these lines. By doing a few simple exercises, you can acquire this skill. The first line that I told you is a straight line. It may be difficult to draw a perfectly straight line at the beginning of the exercise. Just draw a straight line without oscillations. Place white paper under your hand and start drawing different lines. It does not matter if your hand speed is slow or fast. The only important thing is to try to draw these lines perfectly straight. Once from right to left, once from left to right, once from top to bottom, once from bottom to top. Repeat and do these 4 types of hand movements and line drawing over and over again. Your hand should get used to moving in different directions. Draw lines over and over again until your paper is completely filled. Draw 10 or 100 or 1,000 lines. Draw these lines in different directions until your hand gets used to it. Don't forget that, although it seems simple, this is a very, very important exercise and you must do it. The next thing I told you was that we need to be able to draw light lines. We need to gain the skill of controlling the pressure of our hand. When we hold a B6 pencil in our hand and press it on the paper, we can create different degrees of blackness with it. If I press my hand too hard, my line will be this dark. And if I press my hand too hard, the line will be that light. This faint line is very important. This is because we need very thin and faint lines to draw the initial lines. Practice drawing faint lines without shaking. Do not press your hand so that it is heavy in some places and light in others. If your hand pressure is too low or too high, some places will be dark and some places will be light. And this is not good. If you make these mistakes while working, your work will look dirty and it will be clear that you do not have the necessary skills to do it. So right now, put the white paper in front of you and start drawing the lines. The point is that these lines should be uniform and faint. Be patient and do this exercise over and over again until you can draw the right lines. You probably know a lot of artists around you. If you want your work to be different from other artists and look more professional, you should do these basic exercises carefully. Let's move on to the line that is most useful to us. That is, the thin double-sided lines that I explained to you. If you want to draw this line, you should do it in such a way that your pencil is not on the paper from the beginning. If I put the tip of my pencil on the paper and draw a few lines, as you can see, both sides of my line are not thin, and this is not good. To practice these thin double-sided lines, your hand speed should be higher. At the beginning of drawing the line, your pencil is far from the paper. We must move our hand closer to the paper until the tip of the pencil reaches the paper and a line is drawn. And on the other hand, we remove our hand from the paper with the same speed and movement. As you can see, through this technique, we can draw lines that are thin on both sides. Drawing these lines is only possible with a lot of practice. Although it seems simple, these lines form almost half of our drawings. So before we move on to more advanced lessons, be sure to practice these lines well. There is nothing wrong if you can't do this at first. I also practiced more than 200 pages of these lines when I started drawing. I was busy drawing these lines for 5 full days so that my hand would get used to it and I could gain the necessary skill. I am sure that you can also gain this skill with practice. Once you are able to draw these lines and you are sure that your lines are thin on both sides, try drawing lines with smaller distances. To do this exercise, we want to draw parallel lines. That is, in this way, if we draw 2 lines and continue them to infinity, these 2 lines will never intersect each other. We should not draw in such a way that these 2 lines continue to intersect each other. This is wrong. For this exercise, we need parallel lines. Of course, it is not very important that their distances are exact, because we want to draw hair through this technique. It is only important to learn to draw these lines in large numbers and parallel to each other. This is your next exercise to be able to draw thin double-sided lines, one under the other and parallel to each other. This exercise is also very important, and try to practice dozens of pages of it. Compare each line you draw with the previous line and try to be able to draw these thin lines exactly like this. Now I want to talk to you about another exercise, which of course you should definitely do after practicing the thin double-sided lines. So first, draw a few pages of these thin double-sided lines, and whenever you can draw the lines in this way, go to this next exercise. Our exercise is to be able to continue each line that we draw and leave halfway. For example, I draw this line, then I lift the pencil off the paper, and then I draw the rest of it again. Now I'm going to draw both the right way and the wrong way, so you can see. When I draw a line and I lift my hand off the paper, put it back on the paper and draw the rest of the line, my line should look like one piece. For example, sometimes when drawing very long hair, we may have to lift our hand off the paper and draw the rest of it again. So, it's very important that we practice from now on and learn how to continue a half line. These mistakes in connecting the lines should not occur. That is, when I lift my hand off the paper and come back to this line, it should not be clear that these are two lines. It should look like a solid line. This also requires a lot of practice. One thing you can do to become a pro at this exercise is to use the same pressure each time you lift your hand off the paper and put it back on the paper. If your hand pressure is different in the first and second pieces, it will be clear that your line is in two pieces, and this is not good. It should be solid, like these three lines. In these three lines, we cannot tell where we lifted our hand off the paper and continued it again. So do the correct exercise, like these three lines. Draw half lines and continue them again. The more you practice thin double-sided lines, the more successful you will be in this exercise. Don't worry, you can acquire this skill with practice. I repeat that these exercises may seem simple to you, and you may think that everyone can draw a straight line, but I assure you that this is not the case, and doing this professionally requires patience and practice. If you have any questions, write them in the comment section so that I can answer you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next video.